Multisensory encoding. Most people think memory is just about repetition. Read it enough times and it sticks. But your brain doesn't work that way. If you only study through one channel, like reading, you'll forget almost everything within days. The brain needs reinforcement from multiple directions. That's where multisensory encoding comes in. Here's how it works. Each sense you use creates a separate pathway to the same piece of information. Writing by hand activates motor memory, slowing you down and forcing deeper processing. Saying the material aloud triggers what scientists call the production effect. Speaking makes the memory more distinct, while hearing your own voice reinforces it. Listening to audio recordings taps into auditory memory, and drawing diagrams or flowcharts ties the content to visual and spatial memory. One pathway is fragile, 4 pathways are strong. By layering motor memory, auditory memory, visual spatial memory, and the production effect, you build a network of cues that all point back to the same answer. If one pathway fails, another is there to fire. This is why the fastest learners don't stick to one method. They stack sensory channels to multiply retention. Take the example of learning new words in Spanish. If you only read the vocabulary list, you'll forget most of it within days. But if you write each word by hand, say it aloud with the correct pronunciation, record a short audio to listen to later, and sketch a quick image that represents the word, you've now built 4 different retrieval paths. When you need that word in conversation, your brain has multiple hooks to grab onto. Visualization and memory palaces. The brain is built to remember pictures, not abstract words. That's why you can recall scenes from a movie you saw 10 years ago, but struggle to remember a definition you read yesterday. Visualization takes advantage of this by converting abstract information into vivid mental images that your brain naturally locks onto. One of the most powerful visualization methods is the memory palace. This technique has been used since ancient Greece, and it remains one of the most effective memory tools we still have today. The idea is simple. You take a place you know well, your home, your office, your daily walking route, and assign each piece of information to a spot along that path. The more exaggerated or unusual the image, the stronger the memory sticks. This method works because spatial and location memory are among the strongest systems in your brain. You might forget someone's name, but you rarely get lost in your own home. Anchoring information to a familiar mental space transforms recall from effort into instinct. Memory champion Ron White, also known as the brain athlete, often demonstrates this with the parts of a car. He places ideas on the grille, the engine, the dashboard, and the trunk, so each stop along the car cues the next item he needs to remember. You've got to see it to believe it. Ron can take a total stranger off the street and within minutes have them memorize the Bill of Rights, the first 10 Super Bowl winners, or even count to 99 in Japanese. Active recall. Think of your memory like a muscle. If you only feed it information passively by rereading notes or highlighting text, it never gets stronger. But the moment you make it lift weight, by forcing it to retrieve information without looking at the answer, the growth begins. This is the principle of active recall. Memory strengthens not when you see information, but when you struggle to bring it back. In Japan, this principle shows up in karuta, a card game where players race to snatch the right card as soon as a matching line of poetry is read aloud. The game demands instant recall under pressure. That principle applies to learning. Speed and retrieval sharpen memory far more than slow review. One of the simplest ways to train this is through blurting, sometimes called a brain dump. You close the book, grab a blank page, and try to write down everything you remember about a topic. No notes, no prompts. Or set a timer for 60 seconds and force yourself to verbalize everything you know before time runs out. The gaps you uncover aren't failures. They're the exact points your brain needs to strengthen. Think of it as taking your memory to the gym. Every self-test, every brain dump, every round of retrieval is another rep. Over time, your brain doesn't just know the information, it's trained to deliver it on command, whether in an exam, a meeting, or a high-pressure conversation. The Pomodoro effect. Your brain isn't built for endless focus. After about 20 to 40 minutes, attention begins to fray. Distractions creep in, mistakes increase, and retention drops. The Pomodoro technique takes advantage of this natural cycle by splitting work into short, focused bursts, followed by brief breaks. Instead of fighting your attention span, you reset it. The structure is simple: 25 minutes of deep focus, then a 5-minute break. After 4 rounds, take a longer pause. This rhythm works because it mirrors the brain's natural waves of energy and fatigue, known as ultradian rhythms. These cycles govern when your body can sustain attention and when it needs recovery. Taking short breaks during work sessions doesn't just rest your eyes, it resets dopamine, the brain chemical that fuels motivation. Each pause recharges your focus, so you can hit the next round with full intensity. But Pomodoro is more than just a timer trick. The act of committing to a short, defined sprint shuts down procrastination. Telling yourself you only need to focus for 25 minutes feels manageable, so you actually start. And once you've started, momentum carries you further than you expect. Writers, programmers, and even CEOs use this method to stay sharp during long hours of work. By cycling between intensity and rest, the brain encodes information more cleanly and avoids burnout. It's not about working longer, it's about structuring effort so each burst of focus hits with maximum efficiency. The 80-20 rule. Not all learning is equal. Most of the time you spend reviewing, highlighting, or rereading has almost no impact on long-term memory. In fact, only a fraction of what you do makes a difference. The 80-20 rule demonstrates that about 20% of your efforts create 80% of your results. The challenge is finding that 20% and doubling down on it. The idea comes from the Pareto principle, first observed in economics but later found everywhere, from business to health to learning itself. In practice, it means a small set of core concepts usually carries the majority of the value. When you identify and master those high-impact ideas, everything else becomes easier. Applied to learning, this might mean focusing on the 500 most common words in a new language, instead of wasting time on the entire dictionary. Or mastering the key formulas in math that unlock dozens of problems, rather than grinding through every variation. By targeting the leverage points, you accelerate growth while cutting wasted effort. And here's the liberating part. You don't need to master the other 80%. For the most part, you can let it go. That material is mostly noise, and chasing it only dilutes your focus. Once you apply the 80-20 rule and start concentrating energy where it matters most, learning stops being overwhelming and starts becoming efficient, targeted, and powerful. Quizzing and practice exams. One of the fastest ways to learn is to put yourself in testing mode before you feel ready. Most people avoid quizzing because it exposes what they don't know, but that's exactly why it works. Every wrong answer creates a feedback loop. Your brain locks onto mistakes more tightly than successes, making the corrected version far harder to forget. Researchers call this the testing effect. Study after study shows that learners who quiz themselves consistently outperform those who just review notes. The difference isn't about how much they studied, it's about how often they force themselves to apply knowledge in a test-like situation. You can do this with practice tests, apps like Quizlet, or even simple index cards. The more you interact with these practice questions, the more your brain learns to recognize patterns and strengthen weak spots. The power of quizzing isn't in passing these tests, it's in training your brain to perform when it counts. By facing small challenges early, you desensitize yourself to the pressure of the real thing. What was once intimidating becomes routine, and memory retrieval feels natural when it matters most. The Feynman technique. Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, had a reputation for making the most complicated ideas sound simple. He could take quantum mechanics, a subject that baffles even experts, and explain it with chalkboard sketches and everyday language. His secret was that he didn't study to memorize. He studied to teach. The method that bears his name is deceptively simple. Take an idea and explain it as if you were teaching it to a child. Drop the jargon, swap abstract terms for plain words, and force yourself to lay it out step by step. The places where your explanation collapses reveal where your understanding is still shallow. Modern research shows that learners who prepare to teach consistently outperform those who only review. Psychologists call it the protégé effect. Teaching doesn't just clarify, it deepens understanding, strengthens memory by reorganizing information, and makes recall easier later. This approach isn't limited to physics or classrooms. You can use it to sharpen a presentation at work, practice a new language, or even master a hobby. If you can walk a friend through the concept in plain words, whether it's how to change a tire or how the stock market operates, you haven't just learned it, you've owned it. Interleaving. Practicing the same thing over and over feels productive, but it's deceptive. If every problem, drill, or exercise comes in the same order, your brain stops engaging. You know what's coming, so you don't actually have to figure anything out. The result is a practice effect. You feel like you've mastered it, but the knowledge collapses when the order changes. Interleaving prevents that by mixing different skills or problem types in a single session. In math, for instance, students who alternated between fractions, word problems, and ratios scored far higher on final tests than those who drilled one type at a time. The constant variety forced their brains to identify the type of problem before solving it, which kept recall active instead of automatic. Athletes train the same way. A tennis player who rotates serves, volleys, and backhands in one drill adapts far better in real matches than someone who only repeats forehands. The variety feels harder in the moment, but the adaptability it builds carries into the real game. People who interleave often feel slower and less confident during practice, but research shows they consistently outperform those who work on one skill or problem at a time. The brain doesn't learn by guessing the next step, it learns by choosing from variety. When practice mirrors the unpredictability of real life, memory becomes stronger and more flexible. Think of it like training for the trail instead of the treadmill. The treadmill gives you smooth repetition. The trail throws rocks, slopes, and turns. Only the trail prepares you for the real thing. Interleaving does the same for learning. It conditions your brain to recognize, adapt, and retrieve knowledge in any order it appears. Sleep-driven learning. Sleep isn't downtime. It's the stage where your brain takes the raw material of what you learned and forges it into long-term memory. At night, your brain replays key patterns, strengthens the useful connections, and clears out the clutter. Skip this process, and half of what you studied, read, or practiced simply evaporates. Research shows that memories are reactivated during deep sleep and reorganized for faster recall. It's why people who pull all-nighters may feel like they covered more, but actually recall less than those who closed the book and went to bed. The brain literally downloads information while you sleep, moving it from fragile short-term storage into durable long-term memory. It's not just about textbooks. Athletes who sleep after practice retain motor skills more reliably. Musicians who rehearse and then sleep play with greater precision the next day. And the effect isn't limited to a full night's rest. Even a short 20-minute nap can reinforce learning and speed memory consolidation. The takeaway is simple. Treat sleep as study time, a solid night of rest, or even a short, well-timed nap right after studying can do more to lock in what you've learned than an extra hour of grinding. If you want your brain to actually remember tomorrow, the most powerful hack might be the oldest one. Go to sleep. Elaborative interrogation. When your brain is fed plain facts, it treats them like loose notes scattered on a desk, easy to misplace. But when you ask why a fact is true, you connect it to what you already know, and that connection makes the memory of it far more durable. This approach is called elaborative interrogation. Instead of simply memorizing water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, ask why it happens at exactly that temperature. Connecting it to molecules moving faster until they escape as vapor makes the number far easier to recall. Or, instead of trying to memorize when the Great Depression began, ask why it began at that time. Linking it to the stock market crash fixes the year 1929 more firmly in your mind. The simple act of asking why drives deeper processing, which strengthens both comprehension and recall. It isn't about grilling yourself with complicated questions. Even simple prompts like, why would this make sense in the real world? Or, why is this different from what I expected? Are enough to build links that your memory can easily retrieve. Whether you're reading a book on investing, picking up a new skill, or even just trying to remember advice you got from a friend, pausing to ask why cements the material. The brain isn't built to store isolated facts, but it's excellent at holding on to reasons. At the end of the day, learning quickly is about training your brain to work smarter, not harder. If you've got your own brain hack that works, share it below. Somebody else might need it.